September 27th, 2025, the Ukrainian General Staff releases its daily report on Russian combat losses. And the numbers, well, they're staggering. 970 personnel casualties.
The 39 Russian artillery systems destroyed just in the preceding 24 hours.
Right. These aren't just grim statistics you read and forget. They feel like a critical window, maybe a contested one, but still a window into the sheer strategic cost of this war right now. We really need to dive deep into what these numbers mean.
Absolutely, because they're more than just headlines. They're indicators really of two colliding strategies. You've got Russia pushing this relentless, high-cost attritional offensive, especially in Donetsk Oblast.
Trying to capture the whole region.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have Ukraine adapting, becoming incredibly effective with technology, using drones, using precision fire to hit back at Russia's traditional advantages.
So our mission today, our deep dive, is to look at the sources, the strategic reports, these daily claims, Western intelligence estimates, and really try to understand the consequences. The real meaning behind 970 personnel and 39 artillery systems gone in a day.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Nearly 1,000 personnel. How does a number get that high in just 24 hours? We need to grasp the operational tempo. This wasn't some freak event, was it?
No, not at all. It was really the peak, or maybe the culmination, of incredibly intense fighting in the days leading up to that report on the 27th. The scale of the Russian effort was just phenomenal.
How many engagements are we talking about?
Well, the official figures were showing something like 160 distinct combat clashes along the front line, but then that number escalated quickly to 186.
But even 186 clashes doesn't fully capture the intensity, does it? It's the firepower.
Exactly. It's the indirect fire.
Yeah.
We saw reports indicating Russian forces launched somewhere between, 3,200 and almost 5,000 shelling attacks in that single 24-hour period.
Nearly 5,000, and that's before you even factor in the drones.
Right. The kamikaze drones. The numbers there are almost unbelievable estimates, range from 2,000 FPV drones used by Russia up to over 5,900 in one day.
Wow, what's the goal with that kind of volume? Just saturation?
Pure saturation. It's an attempt to overwhelm defenses, to flatten positions, maybe force Ukrainian personnel out into the open where they're vulnerable to the assaults that follow.
And the sources are clear that most of this fire, most of this intensity was focused tightly on Donetsk Oblast, right?
Yeah.
That remains Moscow's primary strategic objective.
It absolutely does. It's probably the most contested piece of land on Earth right now.
Yeah.
And within Donetsk, the real focus, the main effort, as they say, was the Pokrovsk direction.
Pokrovsk. What was happening there specifically?
Extreme pressure. Russian forces were launching assault after assault. Initially, reports mentioned 42. It surged to 62.
62 assaults. Aimed at what?
Aimed at small settlements, places like Nikonorivka and Volodymyrivka. The operational goal seems pretty clear. They want to completely encircle the Pokrovsk-Murnorod urban area. It's a really important strategic hub.
You talked about overwhelming force. What does that look like on the ground when you have, say, 62 assaults hitting one sector? How do the casualties pile up so fast? Is it just forces running into prepared defenses?
Often it's that meat grinder tactic we hear so much about. You have the intense shelling, the drone attacks to soften things up, but then come the infantry waves. And these are often poorly trained, maybe recently mobilized troops.
High cost, low gain.
Extremely high cost. There was one report specifically mentioning 156 Russian soldiers neutralized just in that Pokrovsk sector on the 26th alone. That gives you an idea of the price being paid for these relentless, hyper-localized infantry pushes, especially if they aren't well supported or coordinated.
Which brings us perfectly to that second number, 39. 39 destroyed Russian artillery systems in one day. We've talked about the personnel losses from these attritional assaults, but why are the material losses, especially artillery, why is that so significant?
Well, this gets right to the heart of a real doctrinal problem for Russia. For generations, their military thinking has revolved around artillery as the god of war.
Massed fire barrages.
Exactly. It's how they compensate for maybe inconsistent infantry quality. It's how they expect to gain an advantage. Losing artillery on this scale undermines their entire traditional way of fighting.
And here's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? You can't just line up your guns and blast away anymore because the battlefield is now, what do analysts call it, radically transparent.
That's the term, radically transparent. And what it means for an artillery piece is simple. There's nowhere left to hide. You have constant surveillance from drones, cheap ones, sophisticated ones, everywhere.
So a big gun that takes time to set up
is visible almost the moment it stops moving, or certainly the moment it fires. That transparency has just been lethal for traditional Russian artillery tactics.
So how did Ukraine manage to destroy 39 systems in one day? How are they exploiting this transparency?
By mastering what's called the sensor-to-shooter loop. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. It's the time it takes from spotting a target, the sensor, usually a drone, to hitting it, the shooter, often a precision munition, maybe Western supplied.
And they've shortened that loop dramatically.
Incredibly so. They've integrated reconnaissance, targeting, and firing so effectively that they can often spot a Russian gun and have rounds incoming in under 3 minutes, sometimes even faster.
Wow. Under 3 minutes. That leaves basically zero margin for error for the Russian crews.
None. Survival for artillery crews now means mobility, extreme mobility. The shoot-and-scoot tactic. Fire your rounds and get moving immediately. If you don't, you're likely to be hit.
So those 39 destroyed systems, they're direct evidence of Ukraine's successful adaptation.
Direct, measurable evidence. Evidence of that rapid targeting loop working, and arguably evidence of Russian forces struggling to adapt their more static, massed fire doctrine quickly enough.
And this loops right back devastatingly to the personnel casualties. You mentioned a vicious cycle. How does losing artillery directly lead to losing more soldiers?
It fundamentally changes the way Russia can conduct offensive operations. Without reliable artillery fire support to suppress defenses, launching large, organized armored columns becomes incredibly risky. Those columns become prime targets for Ukrainian anti-tank teams and drones.
So they have to switch tactics.
They're forced to substitute manpower for firepower and protection. They shift towards relying more heavily on these dismounted infantry assaults, the 1,000 cuts approach we talked about. Wave after wave of soldiers trying to overwhelm positions.
Which inevitably drives up those personnel losses.
Exactly. The 970 personnel lost and the 39 artillery systems destroyed, those two numbers are deeply inextricably linked. One enables, or rather necessitates, the other in this current dynamic.
And there's the broader impact too, right? The overall degradation of their firepower. I remember reading estimates that this attrition had knocked Russia's firepower advantage down from maybe 8-1 earlier in the war to something closer to 2-1 by early 2025.
That's a huge shift. And yes, losing that kind of artillery edge forces them further down that path of substituting bodies for shells. It forces brutal choices on commanders. When you can't rely on technological or numerical superiority in firepower, your main remaining lever is just sheer mass of personnel.
Pushing men forward to find and fix the enemy, essentially.
Find, fix, and try to overwhelm through numbers rather than precision or combined arms effectiveness.
Yeah.
Incredibly costly.
Okay, so we have this brutal physical reality on the ground. But connecting this back to the bigger picture, we also have to acknowledge the information war surrounding these losses, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. The human cost is maybe the most intense area of information warfare in this conflict. The casualty figures you hear from Kiev, from Moscow, from independent analysts, they can differ by orders of magnitude.
It's almost dizzying trying to sort through them.
It is. And this immense physical destruction we're talking about almost necessitates a kind of political and informational denial, particularly from one side.
Right. Let's look at Kyiv's perspective first. When they publish figures like 970 Russian losses in a day, pushing their total claimed Russian casualties well over 1.1 million since the start, what's the strategic purpose there?
Well, it serves multiple functions. Domestically, it reinforces the narrative of successful defense against a larger aggressor. Internationally, and perhaps more importantly, it demonstrates to partners providing aid that their support is effective. It shows that Western weapons and Ukrainian tactics are degrading the Russian war machine.
Okay, contrast that sharply with Moscow's approach.
It's almost the polar opposite, a strategy of near total silence on their own losses. I mean, the last official public death count they released was way back in September 2022, and it was just under 6,000.
A number completely disconnected from any realistic assessment now.
Completely. Instead, Russian state media and military briefings focus almost exclusively on reporting wildly inflated claims of Ukrainian losses. You sometimes see claims of 1,500 Ukrainian personnel killed in a day. It's pure state propaganda, designed to project strength and inevitability domestically.
So for us, for anyone trying to understand the real picture amidst this fog of war and propaganda, where do we look for a more objective view?
It's incredibly difficult, but we have to turn to independent analysis. OSINT groups, open source intelligence like Mediazona, working with BBC Russia, do painstaking work. They confirm deaths by name, using public records, obituaries, cemetery data, social media.
So they're confirming actual individuals.
Exactly. Their confirmed count was over 132,615 named Russian soldiers killed by late September 2025. Now, everyone acknowledges this is a conservative baseline. The real number is certainly higher, but it represents verified deaths.
And how does that baseline compare to, say, Western intelligence estimates?
Western intelligence agencies, like the UK's MOD, tend to release broader estimates covering both killed and wounded. An estimate from August 2025, for example, places total Russian casualties killed and wounded combined significantly higher, possibly exceeding 1 million, maybe around 200,000 killed and 810,000 wounded.
So still huge numbers, but different methodologies giving different pictures.
Right. And the massive divergence between all these figures, Kyiv's claims, Moscow's silence, OSINT verification, Western intel, it reflects those different strategic needs we discussed. Ukraine needs to show success to get aid. Russia, as an autocracy waging a war of choice, finds admitting such catastrophic losses politically dangerous, maybe even untenable, so they deny.
Which brings us back to the fundamental strategic question. Really, why? Why does Russia continue with this incredibly high-cost, arguably low-gain meat grinder strategy when the military math seems so brutal? You mentioned something analysts call strategic inelasticity.
That's the concept, strategic inelasticity. It basically means the political goals are fixed, rigid, and aren't really adjusted based on the cost of achieving them. For the Kremlin, the directive to capture all of the Donbass appears non-negotiable.
So the military just has to execute regardless of the price.
Pretty much. They're tasked with achieving that political goal. So they continue to funnel forces into these heavily defended areas using the attritional methods we've seen, because changing the military strategy would require changing the political objective. And that seems off the table.
So the war has really settled into this grim contest of endurance, hasn't it? Defined by these two clashing approaches.
Absolutely. On one side, you have Russia's strategy of attrition. It's built on the belief, or perhaps the hope, that their larger pool of manpower and resources will eventually just wear Ukraine down. They use crypto mobilization, this sort of hidden continuous call-up, often digitized now, to keep feeding bodies into the fight.
Even with these staggering loss rates, you mentioned estimates of over 350,000 casualties annually.
Yes, even rates like that. The calculation seems to be that they can sustain it longer than Ukraine can resist.
And Ukraine's...
It's fundamentally about leveraging quality, technology, and adaptation. Using drones for that real-time surveillance, shortening the sensor-to-shooter loop, employing precision Western weapons to systematically degrade Russia's core capabilities, like their artillery. It's about imposing an unsustainable cost on Russia.
So those daily reports, the 970 personnel, the 39 artillery systems, they're really vital indicators of how that counter strategy is working day to day.
They're crucial data points. They tell us that this isn't about grand maneuvers right now. It's about logistics, industrial capacity, defense production, and ultimately, who can best withstand these horrific losses over the long haul.
Which leads us to a final thought, perhaps a provocative one for you, the listener, to consider.
Yeah, think about the industrial strain. Russia is increasingly relying on refurbished older equipment, pulling tanks from long-term storage, getting ammunition supplies from partners like North Korea. If this rate of artillery destruction, losing dozens of systems a day, like the 39 we discussed, continues, how long can Russia actually maintain its core military doctrine based on massed artillery fire?
What's the breaking point?
What is the ultimate breaking point for their defense industrial base, regardless of the political pressure to keep attacking? That tension between the political imperative and the industrial and human capacity to sustain these losses, that's likely going to define the next phase of this war.
A stark reality to contemplate. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the costs of attrition and the current strategic dynamics on the Eastern Front.